Okay, so we're going to start the webinar. Thanks so much for joining. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. This is the Citizens of Surf webinar, Change in the Lineup. So I just want to say a really massive thank you to the guests today for joining us. We've got 6 amazing speakers. And also thank you all for being here. We hope that it's going to be a dynamic webinar, and we really look forward to having some of your questions and having a discussion at the end. So the guests are going to be sharing about their work across ocean governance, marine citizen science, big wave data, ocean literacy, and semantics, and also equity, diversity, and inclusivity. And so before we get to the guests, I'm just going to give you a really quick introduction to Citizens of Surf. This is a UN Decade of Ocean Science project. So it's endorsed underneath the ECOP program. So also a huge thank you to the ECOP program for hosting us and for the team as well supporting us, and Naomi in the background there. So Citizens of Surf has been running since 2021, and it was in 2023 we went from being an activity, which is quite small scale, to a project which is a little bit bigger. And we've run workshops and sessions across 3 main topics, which is marine biodiversity, marine plastic pollution, and climate change. And this project came from my master's research, which was looking at surfing and ocean literacy and how surfers tend to engage in ocean conservation and use that ocean literacy that they've developed through surfing. And so as just a bit of a lens on my background, I grew up landlocked, so I didn't grow up by the ocean. It wasn't until I was 21 that I started surfing. And when I was 27, I became a coach. So a lot of this is coming from surf education and considering all of those people that are going through surf lessons, through surf schools, and especially now as surfing is really blooming and we're having a lot more people join us in the water. So how can surfers go from kind of dipping a toe into caring about the ocean and riding their first wave to becoming truly active and engaged citizens for the ocean protection and its restoration as well? So first of all, we're going to be looking at protection and surfing in the sense of ocean governance. And I'm going to head over to Kizzy. So before we head over to Kizzy, I just want to introduce her because she's recently been in Australia presenting her work. So Kizzy is a coastal communities engagement officer in the South Coast Marine Recovery Project for the Wildlife Trust. She's currently completing a PhD at the University of Plymouth on transformative ocean governments, exploring how people, place, and power shape marine decision-making. Her work spans surf reserves, marine parks, and biosphere reserves in the UK and Australia. She's working at the intersection of community engagement, surf culture, and marine conservation. And as I mentioned, she recently presented her work at the World Surf Conservation Conference. So Kizzy, I'm going to hand it over to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Natalie.
And let you do so.
Cool. Okay, just checking everyone can see my screen. Oh, no, that's not worked. There we go. That should work.
Yeah, it's
Amazing.
loading.
Okay. Great, thank you, Natalie. And as Natalie said, I am currently working on the South Coast Marine Recovery Project. And this is a new multi-million-pound project led by the Wildlife Trust looking at marine recovery across the whole of the South Coast. However, as excited as I am about that project and having a real life full-time job after doing my PhD, that's not what I'm going to talk to you about today. I'm here to talk to you as Natalie said, about my PhD, which I'm just finishing off. So, part of my work, as Natalie said, looks at how culture-led designations like surf reserves can influence ocean governance. And at its core, this is about a simple shift. So, it's about surfers not just being ocean users, excuse me, but they are active participants in shaping how the surf ecosystem and surf governance is understood and it's valued around the world. We're starting to see more recognition and formal recognition through initiatives like surf reserves and other community-led designations. And these aren't necessarily statutory protections in the traditional sense, but they do carry cultural weight, local legitimacy, and in some cases, real influence. So, a thread that kind of runs through my presentation today is questions. So, I'll start with this one, which is who shapes the future of our coasts? And surf breaks they're often seen as sort of recreational spaces, but they are actually really complex social, ecological systems. And they sit at that intersection of ecology, culture, coastal processes, and local economies. And they're shaped by things like sediment movement, water quality, coastal engineering, and tourism pressures. And despite all of this, surf breaks are rarely recognised as things that need to be governed in their own right. And that is a gap where both that problem and the opportunity sits. So, if surf breaks are these complex systems, the next question is what role do surfers actually play in them? And Natalie's already really set the scene for that as well. And so, surfers are in the water every day. They constantly are observing changes in waves, sand movement, water quality, coastal conditions, and over time that builds a really deep place-based knowledge, and it's incredibly detailed and highly local. But surfers, they're not just observing, they're also acting, they organise, they care for places, they shape behaviours in the water and along the coast. So they are not just users of these systems, they are active participants within them. So, what makes surf reserves different then? So, World Surfing Reserves, and they're one of my sort of main case studies in my PhD, they are a global program led by Save the Waves Coalition, identifying and recognizing surf ecosystems of international significance. That's the World Surf Reserve. There's also national and regional ones as well. And they are community led, culture based, and largely non statutory. So they don't have necessarily that formal legal power, but they do create legitimacy, visibility, and collective action. And that distinction is really important because while most surf reserves are not necessarily legally binding, that is starting to change. So, as some examples, and we heard some amazing examples at the World Surf Conservation Conference in the Gold Coast. And one of those examples is Peru. So, surf breaks are protected under national law, which prevents development that would change or damage the waves. In California, and Save the Waves Coalition is currently leading on this, there is currently a bill proposing state designated surfing reserves to recognise and protect culturally and economically important surf zones. So globally, we are starting to see that surf breaks entering that legal and policy framework. But the majority still sit in the space where they have that cultural legitimacy rather than formal protection. So, what do surf reserves actually do in practice? So, across my research, particularly in Australia, they constantly act as platforms that turn that local knowledge that was spoken about into collective action. So, they support stewardship, education, behaviour change, and coordination across different groups. In Noosa, this shows up through education programmes, surf etiquette, strong cultural identity. On the Gold Coast, the Surf Reserve is actually linked to the city's surf management plan, which is unique across the world, and it gives it a clearer route into policy and conversations within local government. And in Manly, the focus has been on rebuilding identity and mobilizing community engagement. So these reserves are really doing a lot. They influence behavior, they're building knowledge and bringing people together. But most of this impact is happening at the level of culture and community. So this is the point um, where there becomes that tension. It's the core of this tension. And on one hand, you have surf reserves and surf communities that are generating this strong cultural influence. But in practice, decision making sits largely still within those formal systems like planning and policy. So that question then moves to how does that cultural legitimacy translate into decision making, real world decision making where surfers can have an impact on how that environment is being managed. And without that translation, that influence remains really local and structural change remains limited. So what happens when culture does meet governance? So in North Devon in the UK, it's the UK's first World Surf Reserve. This gives us an interesting example because here a World Surf Reserve sits within a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve, as do several others around the world, including Noosa. So you have two different types of system operating in the same place. So the Surfer Reserve brings that local knowledge, that beach level action, and that strong culture of stewardship and advocacy. And the Biosphere brings partnerships, long term coordination, and clear links into policy and statutory processes. So, together, these create a potential bridge between that culture and structure. And between the two of them, there is this shared ambition around clean water, access, evidence-led decision making, and there's also growing potential to align data, influence that planning around those local areas, and connect community knowledge into governance. But there are challenges that still remain, and translation doesn't happen automatically. And North Devon shows both what is possible and what still needs to change. So the question then becomes what actually enables that translation to happen? So, what the research shows is that transformation doesn't necessarily start in policy. It does actually start from people, from culture, from those communities asking for change and driving change. But it only becomes structural when that culture connects to those institutions. So, across case studies, four things consistently enabled that shift. So the first one is that policy integration, so recognizing surf breaks within planning and decision making. Second is that sustained funding, like with probably everything in the world, but it's moving beyond those short-term volunteer-led models to something more stable. The third is then that shared evidence, so translating that local knowledge into formats that can be used in decision making and valuing that. And then the fourth is that inclusive governance, so expanding who gets to participate and whose voices are heard. And when these elements come together, there is a real potential to move from that local stewardship to system level change. But that shift depends on different people playing different roles. So I just want to finish on this, that surfing is not just a recreational activity. It is a way of knowing the ocean. It's a way of caring for it and shaping what happens next. So across all of this work, surfers are not just users, they are observers, knowledge holders, stewards. And when that connects with communities, governance, and research, there is a real potential to shape more inclusive and adaptive futures. But that shift does depend on all of us playing our role. And I've even included, children and young ocean leaders there, by learning, by experiencing, by holding adults accountable and asking questions, they can really shape the future now, not necessarily just when they have paid roles and become adults. So, from those in the water to those making decisions, to those building evidence and those shaping the future, we can ultimately change the way we govern our oceans. And it is about people from the beginning. In case anyone's interested, I've also created a small set of resources for young people based on my research. So they're bookmarks. I um, did the writing, and then I found some amazing three illustration artists at the bottom corner there, who I then managed to find some funding so they could do all these beautiful drawings. And the lovely Yvette, who is presenting later as well, she was an inspiration from the front cover, so I'm really excited that you get to hear her speak today as well. But yeah, if anyone's interested in getting a bookmark for themselves or others, or lots of bookmarks, then please contact me. And so, just to finish, a huge thank you to all of the World Surfing Reserves in both Australia and the UK who welcome me into their communities. Thank you for the photographers who shared their amazing photos with me as well, because it really brings it to life. And if you're interested in my research further, you can click on the QR code. And both my email addresses are there for whether you're interested in my research or my paid job as well. So thank you so much. And thank you, Natalie, for inviting me today.
Thank you so much, Kizzy. Wow, amazing. We haven't got too much time. I've already got loads of questions for you. If you've got a question specifically for Kizzy, you can pop it in the Q&A and she can answer it. And this goes for all of the presentations. And then if there's any that we haven't answered, we'll get to it at the end. We are already behind time, so we're going to quickly move forward to Jess. So Jessica Bradford is going to be presenting about surf sessions and sea surface temperature, citizen science in the lineup. So we're going one step closer to protecting surf breaks. By day, Jess is an ocean research project manager with over a decade of experience in the environmental non-profit sector, but much of her connection to the ocean happens in the water as a surfer and a diver on Canada's Atlantic coast. So she's driven by a belief that ocean goers can play a meaningful role in creating change. And she's launched her own surfer-led sea surface temperature monitoring initiative. And this is what she's going to be sharing with us today. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. I might be able to make up a little bit of time for us. I was coming in around 8 or 9 minutes, so we'll see. Hi, everyone. My name is Jess, and today I'm going to share my project collecting sea surface temperature data while I surf. And just to confirm, everyone can see my screen, right?
Yeah, perfect.
Cool. Okay. As mentioned, I work professionally in ocean research as a project manager with an organization called Ocean Tracking Network. But that's not why I'm here today. I've taken vacation time and I'm here out of my own volition to share my personal passion project. I live and surf on the Atlantic coast of Canada and Nova Scotia. I surf mostly cold water, except for the few months when the water warms up here. And I can say that I have only been on one warm water surf trip in my whole life. Working in and around the ocean technology and being a surfer who's in the water regularly, I think naturally I started to wonder how I might be able to combine these things. A little bit more background on where the idea for my project came from. As we can all agree, coastal areas are incredibly important, but surprisingly, they're not very well understood. Nearshore sea surface temperature is undersampled, and surf zones can be especially difficult to monitor. At the same time, these environments are highly dynamic with many factors influencing water temperature, so capturing that variability remains a real challenge. Surfers, on the other hand, spend a lot of time in the water, often returning to the same locations again and again. That consistency creates a really unique opportunity. For years, I've been following SmartFin, which integrates sensors directly into surfboard fins, but I'm on their email list. I'm waiting to find out when someone like me can access this technology, but it doesn't seem like it's widely accessible yet. I also came across initiatives like Citizens of Surf, and it was really inspiring to see a community of people who, like me, want to combine surfing with citizen science and lived coastal experience. Through this project, I've also become aware of a growing body of research highlighting the role that ocean users can play in data collection and the real potential of these kinds of approaches. So rather than waiting any longer, I took a DIY approach. I purchased a hobo pendant temperature logger and attached it directly to my leash, positioning it near the tail so it stays submerged during a session while minimizing drag. I started sharing a little bit about this on social media, specifically starting with LinkedIn, and that's how I became connected with Nat Fox, who was interested in joining the effort as well. So the image here with the green and yellow board shows Nat with her logger. I also got connected with the company that develops the loggers. They were really supportive of my initiative and sent some additional units. So that allowed me to scale up and attach loggers to multiple boards, creating what I like to call the fleet. And this meant I could collect data consistently, regardless of which board I was using. Here's a glance at what the process looks like. So using the Hobo Connect mobile app on my phone, I connect to the logger via Bluetooth and configure it to record temperature every minute. So this can be configured however you want. That's just the option that I've chosen. I start the logger before heading into the water, usually as a part of my board waxing routine. Then, of course, step 3, I go surf and enjoy the session while the data is being collected. Once I'm out of the water and back at the car, I stop the logger, download the data through the app, upload it as a CSV file to a Google Drive folder where I organize everything. As surfers, we all know how antsy we can be to get in the water, or me anyway. So it's really important to me that this process didn't add much time or hassle. All right, so what does the data look like? Since I started this project on August 20th, 2025, I've logged 86 surf sessions. So these sessions span 7 different surf spots, 6 of which are located relatively close together. And the pie chart here shows the frequency of sessions across those different locations. Oh, sorry, I'm jumping around too much here. I'm not sure if you're able to, there we go. Yeah, there we go. You should be able to see just a tiny little pop-up, may not be legible, but has a little code for the spot name and then the percentage that I spend there, so the frequency. This data now covers all 4 seasons, including complete autumn and winter coverage so far. My warmest recorded session was at the end of August of last year with sea surface temperatures close to 20 degrees Celsius. And my coldest was in late February of this year, just hovering above 1 degree Celsius, demonstrating how extreme the seasonal range can be in my area. When we plot the data over time, this is what my data set looks like. Okay, this begs the question, why does this matter? So when we zoom in on buoy coverage in my region, specifically those recording sea surface temperature, we start to see some gaps. In this view, you can see that there are no nearshore buoys in the immediate area that I'm surfing in, so that's circled in orange. And the closest one to me, which is a little icon in red, is currently offline and has been offline for a few months now. On top of that, several other buoys across the region are also currently offline. So what this highlights is a broader issue. Even where monitoring infrastructure exists, it's not always consistent or reliable. I'd argue that this isn't a local challenge only. It's likely happening in coastal regions around the world. Speaking of buoys, how does my data compare? So to explore this, I pulled sea surface temperature data from a regional buoy called the Herring Cove Buoy using an ERDAP open data system and plotted it alongside my own observations. This buoy is located in a straight line about 115 kilometers or roughly 16 nautical miles away from my sampling area. So my data set here only runs to January 2026. It's not fully up to date, but overall you can see that my measurements track the same general trend as the buoy data. I think that's important because it does suggest that this DIY low-cost approach is actually capturing real meaningful environmental patterns. But there's also an interesting moment here that I wanted to point out. You'll notice a sharp dip in my temperature record. At first glance, you might assume that this is a sensor error, but I can confidently say it's not. I was out surfing that day. I went in wearing a sleeveless long Jane wetsuit because it had been so warm, and I was genuinely surprised by how much colder the water felt, which prompted me to check the nearest buoy data. And sure enough, my surf spot was about 5 degrees colder than what all the regional buoys were reporting. And for me, that really drove home the point. While buoys and satellite data can give us valuable regional baseline information, they can miss what's happening at a local scale. So in situ measurements like those collected during surf sessions can capture fine scale variability, microclimates, and even potential thermal refuges that are simply invisible in broader data sets. And those small scale differences can really matter for understanding nearshore ecosystems. Okay, so what's next? I'm going to let you in on my top secret project plan. Kidding. I mean, if I'm being honest, that is kind of how this all started. But I can proudly say that there is a bit more structure, a little more method to the madness. So here's what is actually next. I'm working on finishing and submitting a paper as part of a UN Ocean Decade special issue on ocean literacy for the Journal of Ocean and Coastal Management in collaboration with NAT. Second, I'll keep doing what started this whole thing, surfing and collecting sea surface temperature data. Third, a goal to build out a full year, full season data set, which will allow for a more robust analysis and comparison with buoy observations. And finally, I would love to expand this beyond just myself and Nat, building a network and partnerships to explore how this approach could scale to other surfers and coastal regions and identify meaningful pathways for how this kind of data could be used. So thank you so much for your time, allowing me to share my project. I really appreciate it. If you have any follow-up questions or thoughts, please don't hesitate to reach out. I've included my contact information here.
Great, thank you, Jess. And again, yeah, if you want to have any questions for Jess specifically, pop them in the Q&A, yeah, great. It's so good because we've got a lot of people who are surfers, sailors, researchers as well. So I can imagine that call for people to join is definitely going to be inspiring others. So thank you so much, Jess. We're going to move on from smaller waves to big waves. We're going to Nazaré in Portugal. So we're heading over to Matheus Vieira, who is a PhD candidate in ocean engineering at the University of Lisbon. And he is head of technology at the Big Wave Tracker. So Matheus is going to talk to us about wave measurements, where science meets surfing. Take it away, Matheus.
All right, just share my screen. Okay, nice. Thanks a lot for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here and talk about this topic that, really enjoy. And you're gonna see why. Because, besides studying and working with the ocean, I have been riding waves most of the time in my boogie board, and something that has been helping me a lot to understand the ocean, the physical process going on. So it kind of creates, this feedback loop between the science and experimenting in situ. And also, I have been always really curious about measuring stuff and knowing how hard it is to capture these parameters in the ocean, especially in the surf zones. I dedicated some time participating in operational campaigns like in industry and academia, and also trying to develop new tools to measure physical properties in the ocean, mainly the wave parameters. So like in general, the big picture is like why should we measure waves and in the ocean? And I would say these are the main concerns about it. We really need wave information for coastal safety navigation, design of marine structures to ensure like how we get extract energy from the ocean, like oil and gas platforms and renewable energy. All these, there's a big market and a lot of money going on. So they really rely on the wave conditions. But of course, we can also measure waves for surfing. And I think surfing is growing so much, and I can see is a really important, part of the coastal ecosystem. And as we are riding the waves, and we can really benefit from wave measurements, of course. And especially about big wave surfing, it has been gaining a lot of attention lately, and people are really curious about which one was the biggest one. Like there's some surfers getting awards from that. So a lot of important sectors are looking at it. So, and these really big waves, they usually happen in very specific spots, and I'm quite lucky to be really close to Nazaré. That's where the biggest wave usually breaks every winter. So here, I wanna point it out, like how the surf community can understand the process, like because we are really used to check surf websites where you have the wave conditions offshore. That's the left animation here. So, but the truth is, until the from the deep waters to the breaking zone, things can change a lot. So in these charts, we can see like the swell height and period, and also direction, and it gives us a big picture and a nice understanding of the storms. But the truth is the wave changes a lot until they arrive at the beach. So when they start to approach to the shore, they start feeling the bottom, and the bathymetry affects totally how the wave speed behaves. Also, how the wave can grow or change directions regarding the coast orientation, and also the local winds. That's really important regarding the quality of the waves. As surfers, we know like when the winds are offshore or onshore, the quality is totally different. So yeah, I just brought some examples about wave models from deep waters, a bit the middle one a bit more like in the between. So you don't see wave breaking, but is a more local scale. So you can see how the waves are interacting with the bathymetry, and in this case, this is Nazaré. So you have a big submarine canyon here that changes totally the behavior of the waves. They change direction, they interact between them, and they create these peaks when they encounter each other. And in the right side, we have the measurements in situ in Nazaré with our system. So is exactly what's going on during the wave riding. And the colors here means the water surface elevation. Okay. So this is our main, like our primary results from the measurements we can get from our system is like the 3D ocean surface. So you can see at every step, every time step, how this surface is and how it evolves over time. And from this map, this three-dimensional map, and we can extract all this information that are really useful for the surfing community, like wave height, period direction, wave speed, and in some cases also the geometry of the barrel, when the wave overturning. So I picked these parameters because I think it's the most important information for surfers here. And because they tell you about mainly like how powerful is the wave or how good is the wave. Okay, so our system is composed by 2 scientific cameras. That's very important to point it out because this method is not possible with just 1 camera. And with these 2 point of views of the same area, we can apply some algorithms to reconstruct the 3-dimensional surface. And what is important here is because, you know, like the waves can change a lot over a given area. So you cannot use conventional instrumentation that just picks and gets information for 1 point. So you really need to see what's going on in a larger area. And then you can really track where the highest point is, the highest crest, and how this wave is moving along this space. So for that, we use 2 scientific cameras. They are synchronized and calibrated using this chessboard, and also connected to quite powerful hardware to process this data. Okay, just to show like our big wave tracker pipeline. So on the top left, we have the input image from one of the cameras, and in the bottom left, the 3D reconstruction project, just one moment in time. And I can pick points and I project it to the original image and see exactly where this is the highest and the lowest point. Like getting cross sections, and from these you can see and compute wave height, wave steepness. That they tell you a lot about how energy this wave have, or how powerful it is, and more how radical it is based on the steepness. So as I said, if we map an area, we have information over like 100 meters. So you can really see and find the peaks where the highest waves are breaking. And for example, this data we got in Azera 2024 was not really big waves, but they were about like 7 meters high. And it's really interesting how they behave when they encounter each other, creating those peaks, especially because of the presence of the canyon in the vicinity of the beach. And it's not all the beaches that you have waves like these or this process going on. So, like with this kind of information, you can really map what's really happening here. And that's another example of interesting information we can have from this kind of measurements. Is like the barrel, the tube dimensions, right? Again, I have the input image on top and the reconstruction below. And we also see the degree of accuracy here. It looks quite good. And you can pick like points here to know exactly how wide is the barrel. And it can tell you like how powerful is the wave. as a surfer, you know, like if you have a really wide barrel, because the wave kind of turns, it's totally related to how the only method, the only technology can really give you this information, you know, because you need a three-dimensional map of the wave to assess this kind of parameters here. So if you compute this ratio between the barrel length and width, you get this breaker intensity. So different kind of breaking waves, we have different break intensity. So you can start creating, like, I would say, a kind of catalog of waves, for example, based on this parameter. So that's me in Indonesia some years ago. You also need like a good angle of view from the wave. That's true. But nowadays it's getting very easy with drones and stuff like that, or from jet skis, in this case, from a Portuguese surfer, Nick van Roop, also Indonesia. So with this kind of information, we really can help surfers to know what kind of waves they are riding and what they can looking for in their surf trips, and you know, like improving their performance and things like that. So that's it. Try to be quickly. So it's a very interesting and a lot of things to cover, but try to focus on the surfing aspects. But I'm really happy to be part of it, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Matheus. Yes, that was really cool. And I have loads of questions for you. I wonder if this year was particularly hit by storms again and again on the west coast of Portugal. So it would have been a lot of data for you to analyze this year in particular. So if anyone has questions for Matheus, please pop them in the Q&A. We're going to head in a different direction now, from the waves of the ocean to the waves of the body, to Anna Rickmann. So Anna and I have also been working together on retreats, and Anna is a researcher and somatic movement facilitator, exploring how people connect with the ocean through lived, embodied experiences. She creates and studies immersive retreats that integrate surfing, movement, and reflection to investigate how marine identity develops and expresses, and how deeper ocean connection can support well-being and stewardship. So over to you, Anna. Thank you.
So I hope you can see my slides.
Yes.
Great. Quickly, it's perfect. Adapt this. And let's go. Yes. Hi, my name is Anna, and today I'm gonna present you with my project, which is called See Within. I developed it in my master's at the University Cité Nova. It's also in Portugal. And this research explores how we come to feel part of the ocean and not just understand it with our minds. And I've had many conversations with friends who also surf, where we kept coming back to the same things, that surfing doesn't only feel like a sport to us, but it's way more. There's this sense of belonging, and it connects us with this, with something bigger, right? Maybe you've also had that feeling, but I also realized it's incredibly hard to explain to people who haven't experienced it. Yet it really makes us want to protect the ocean. And that difficulty of putting it into words also made me wonder if we're missing something in how we understand our relationship with the ocean. So I started looking for research regarding that feeling also from an academic viewpoint. And I realized that many approaches to ocean literacy remain primarily cognitive. So they're not really diving into this lived experience that I had myself. However, through my experience as a surfer and my work as a yoga teacher and somatic movement facilitator, I was already familiar with this different way of knowing, with this knowing through the body. And I realized it's not only a personal experience, but also increasingly recognized in academic research. So when you look at fields like human geography, for example, that connection to the ocean, which is not only something we think or feel, but something that emerges through lived sensory and place-based experience, is also highlighted there. And through that, we gain a sense of embodiment, this knowing through sensation, movement, and immersion in the ocean, which you may have experienced yourself if you are an ocean person. So in this sense, surfing can be understood as a somatic practice, which involves this continuous bodily attunement to the waves, to balance, to timing, and also to the ocean as the surrounding environment. And through this, the ocean isn't just observed, but it's really experienced from within through the body. And this perspective connects directly to what is described as a seascape epistemology. So it understands knowledge as something that emerges through direct interaction with the sea. And from this seascape viewpoint, the ocean can become this relational place of knowing, where knowledge is also in constant movement and shaped through the embodied experience. And we heard a couple of these things already in the presentations before, how as a surfer, you really start understanding the ecosystem that you're in. So from this perspective, knowing emerges through multiple forms of engagement. So through this embodied sensory, emotional, but also intellectual engagement, which brings together all these different ways of knowing that are often separated also if you look at Western academic frameworks. And importantly, also this knowing the ocean and knowing the self become really intertwined. So identity forms through lived encounters with the sea, rather than through detached and cognitive understanding alone. So my research asks, what does an embodied sea-centered approach reveal about marine identity as a relational way of knowing the ocean? So in other words, what do we understand differently about the relationship with the ocean when we look at it from this lived and embodied experience? And to answer this question, I drew on the framework of marine identity, and that looks at how our experiences with the ocean become part of how we understand ourselves. And it helps to see the human-ocean relationship not as something we only think about, but as something we live through our bodies, emotions, and experiences. And it's often described as the connection between a person's self-concept and the ocean. So in other words, how do people come to see themselves as ocean people? So this includes also different dimensions, as you can see here. It includes what we know about the ocean. It includes what we feel towards the ocean and how we act towards the ocean. And building on that, I added a relational dimension, focusing on how we experience ourselves in this belonging to the ocean rather than seeing ourselves as separate from it. And all of that matters because when people experience the ocean as part of themselves, they tend to act with greater care and responsibility toward it as well. And as Natalie already said, to explore this concept, I designed an embodied sea-centered retreat to make processes of marine identity formation visible. This design is exploratory, and it's focusing on how participants experience, articulate, and reflect on their ocean relationship in this immersive setting. So it was the research was conducted in a 6-day ocean retreat, and we did some surfing, we did some somatic movement in and out of the ocean, and there was a lot of guided reflection also, all in direct interaction with the sea. And it was intentionally designed as a space for this embodied engagement and meaning making. So not only as a research setting, but as the lived context, a lived laboratory, basically, in which marine identity could emerge, but also be observed. And I was present in a dual role. On the one hand, I was the researcher, and on the other hand, I was the facilitator. So that allowed me to study these processes as they unfolded in real time. And in order to gather some data, I used a mixed methods approach with a focus on qualitative data. I designed some methods specifically for this context. It included journaling. There were some daily emotional check-ins. The participants were invited to draw, and there was some guided reflections, which were all combined with my personal in-field observations as the researcher to help understand how participants experienced their relationship with the ocean throughout that week. And additionally, I designed a survey to get some exploratory indicators of participants' ocean orientation and also that self-reported change over the course of the week to capture both measurable change but also the lived experience in more qualitative sense. So what did I find out? Looking at the results, the feeling that I described and had discussed with some friends, it turns out it wasn't only me. So maybe you already also connected to that story. And in the ocean retreat, participants' marine identity did maybe not emerge as a fixed trait where people were saying, I have a marine identity, but it did emerge as a relational and embodied process that was unfolding over time. The participants experienced the ocean not just as a setting, but they actually saw it as a relational other, something they felt in connection with and sometimes even in dialogue with. And this relationship became visible primarily through emotional and embodied experiences. So through this feeling, sensing, and being in the water, rather than through the cognitive understanding. However, as I also described in the beginning, for myself, participants, they also often struggled to put their experience into words, but they were using metaphors such as the ocean as a teacher, a home, or a life source. I put a little one here to make sense of their feeling. And also they were expressing actually quite some ambivalence, which the feeling of belonging to the ocean brought up. A lot of emotions from anxiety to awe and gratitude were experienced towards the ocean, and these were even intensified throughout the retreat. Moreover, there was an increased connectedness to the ocean, an increase in well-being and behavioral intentions after that week. However, there was only limited change in cognitive knowledge and behavioral itself. But generally speaking, marine identity became visible not through a single measure, but through a pattern of feeling, relating, and orienting towards the ocean that unfolded over time. So this research contributes on 3 levels. Academically, it reframes marine identity as this embodied and relational process. So the sea within, right? It shows that ocean literacy, maybe it's not so linear, but actually develops through cognitive, emotional, relational, and behavioral dimensions that all evolve and come together. So it becomes a way of knowing with and through the ocean rather than only about it. And in education and practice, the retreat can be seen as this participatory tool for ocean education to combine immersion, reflection, and emotional engagement, and position surfing also as an embodied practice to making the ocean knowledgeable. And more broadly, it points towards the shift from an abstract environmentalism into this lived relationship of care and reciprocity, where the ocean is experienced as part of who we are. So thank you so much for diving into this with me. And I'm going to continue to develop this work at the intersection of ocean education, embodied practice, and research. So if this resonates with your work, I'd be very happy to connect, collaborate, or explore future opportunities together. And if any of the water women here feel curious to explore this research in a more embodied way, I also do have a few spots left in the upcoming ocean retreats at the end of this month and also again in October here in Portugal. Thank you, Nat, also for inviting and yeah, very curious to listen to the rest as well.
Thank you, Anna. Amazing. Great to see some of the outcomes from your research. That's awesome. So we're going to go to Yvette now. So Yvette, I'll share your slides and I'll just introduce you. Yvette is a legend. She specializes in embedding equity, diversity, inclusivity, and justice and belonging into surfing, ocean advocacy, and conservation sectors, ensuring that organizations and initiatives are representative, accessible, and impactful, whilst avoiding tokenism and exclusion. As an EDI manager for Surfers Against Sewage, former core team member of the North Devon World Surfing Reserve, and founder of Wave Wahinis CIC, she has designed and delivered programs that expand ocean awareness for underrepresented universities, as well as pioneering UK research on diversity in surfing. She's also a Churchill Fellow, and this, I think, is what you're going to be talking about today, Yvette. So let me share your slides and give you the floor.
Amazing. Thank you, Nat. Yeah, hi everyone. As Nat says, I'm Yvette, and I'm just going to talk you through a little bit of my background before I dive into my presentation. So I am very much a novice surfer. I grew up in a city and didn't really come across surfing in any other ways other than sort of films and, you know, things like Point Break. And it wasn't until my eldest child wanted to surf, they were 12, that sort of surfing really came onto my radar because we'd relocated from a city to the coast. So I'd really like to kind of talk to you a little bit more about what that's been like and actually how that's given me a really, really niche perspective on the barriers to entry for things like surfing. So if you can go into the first slide for me, please, Nat. Amazing. So we're going to start with the really obvious one, is how important the ocean is for connecting us. And it is a global ocean. So we are all connected through it, no matter where we are on the planet, but it's not a neutral entity, and it has been shaped through our histories, through different cultures, and increasingly through power structures and different struggles. But as so many of the people who've already spoken, surfing has this really amazing quality of fostering this sense of environmental awareness and a natural desire to steward the ocean. But what I've been really finding is the importance that we need inclusive structures that are actually opening up surfing and other ocean sports. But obviously my particular area has been surfing, to more diverse communities, in particular looking at things around race and ethnicity, because the more of us that are exposed to sports that actually make us fall in love with something and make us act on something, the more likely we are to then continue and protect it. So I am going to go straight into the Churchill Fellowship before I kind of explain how I got there. So if you want to pop onto the next slide for me. So I have only just come back from my fellowship journey, actually. So I travelled for the first 8 weeks of this year, travelling in through the States. So focusing on New York and California, and then I went over to sort of colonized land and went to Hawaii. Then I hopped over to Australia, and then India, and then Sri Lanka. So the purpose of those travels were to actually evaluate their systems and structures in comparison to the UK system, because what I'd found as part of being within this system for the past 10 years is it's extremely exclusive. It's a really challenging sport to be in and to participate in, but it's led me into conservation, advocacy and activism, hence my role within Surfers Against Sewage. So I know that if it can kind of do that for me, it can do that for lots of communities that it's currently excluding from its participation. And that's not necessarily by design, but it is certainly by the systems that it exists within, that do sort of support it. And what I'd found sort of more globally is that surfing is a more accessible sport, and ocean advocacy, activism, and conservation definitely have more ethnic diversity further up in their sort of management and hierarchy. So that was why I wanted to travel to these particular areas to look at what they were doing differently. And so we can kind of see actually what the UK isn't doing and what the UK can do. And what was really clear is that having access was the main thing, being able to access the sport in a way that suited those different communities, and having that inspiration, having that support, and being in those inclusive environments was key to kind of supporting moving up through those communities. And if we go through to the next slide for me, but I guess the key point of how I got there is the surf club that I started, which was Wave Wahinis. We're now 10 years old and have, again, increasingly just through finding out how many people, particularly how many people like me, how many people of colour aren't participating within the sport. We began looking at and running specialist and bespoke surf sessions for those communities to actually understand better, you know, what were the main barriers. You know, was it geography, was it finance, was it representation, all those things. And you know, working within certain systems, you obviously want to look to those systems to help provide the answers. But what I'd found that actually governance within the UK system wasn't looking for the answers. And so they weren't looking at sort of asking questions as to who wasn't participating. They were only really interested in who was participating. So after sort of many years of frustration at wanting to find out the sort of who wasn't participating, Wave Wahinis created our own survey systems, and we ran those in 2022 and 2024 to look at actually people's views around surfing and diversity. And what we found was obviously not unexpected, that it is quite an exclusive sport. But what we found, which is why we sort of then gone to the fellowship from this perspective, was that 100% of respondents had said that surfing had increased their level of active advocacy and conservation acts. So it wasn't just that they were more aware of the issues around them because they're in the water so much, but it 100% increased their activity within this area. So they became active participants within ocean conservation. So that was a huge finding. And it was one that actually people haven't put those numbers together before and haven't put the two areas of research together. So for us, that was really important to kind of show that, you know, connection does lead to protection in these instances. And so the more people we can get connected should then 100% lead on to the more people we'll be protecting as well. So if you can hop on for me, Nat, please. We're going to make up some time because I talk really quickly and will go through things very quickly. So Nat, I'm on it. So as I said, what it has done is surfing did inspire their ocean action, which is incredible, but it also gives people more confidence in talking about the ocean. We've had members of our club as young as 11 writing to serving prime ministers to complain about water quality. And that is on their own sort of volition to do those things, knowing that they have our support and they have our sort of guidance, but also that we're openly talking to our young girls that are surfing with us. So it's not just something that we keep for our women's club. It is the girls that we're talking to as well about these issues. And when they see sessions cancelled because of water quality and sewage spills, it was a really incredible moment that, you know, one of the girls said, actually, what can we do? And, you know, and sort of working for SAS, I'd obviously turn around and say, well, there's things you can do, sign petitions, you can write to water boards, you can write to your local MP. And when I'd said that, I had just been giving them advice as to what we'd give everybody. But I didn't realize that, you know, she would then go home with her sister and say, I'm going to not write to my local MP, I'm actually going to write to the Prime Minister. And then her little sister said, I'm going to write to the head of the water company then, if you're going to do that. And, you know, to have an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old at the time take those steps, I think it just goes to show the impact that you can have if you provide those access steps, and that family now surf together as an entire surfing family, having moved to the area as complete non-surfers. So I think that just goes to show the impact that you can have just as a club and just as providing something that is friendly and fun. It does give the people access, fun, support, and yeah, the desire to protect and campaign. So yeah, if you move on to my next slide, please, Nat. So this is, I'm sure that you've probably come across wheels of privilege in many other settings. But what myself and a colleague within Protect Blue, Lindsay Hawkin, had found that actually there's a really specific set of barriers to ocean sports and surfing that don't come up in any other wheel of privilege. So we actually sat down and decided that we should write a special one in my day job to actually say that it has its own bespoke issues with and privilege around accessing the ocean and accessing then ocean conservation and advocacy too. So we thought it was really important for people to actually just stop, spend a few minutes and take the time to check, where your privilege sits on this particular wheel, and then have a look at those communities that currently would sit on the outer circles of this wheel and think, well, how can they feed into this? How can I make what I'm doing more accessible to that particular set of intersecting identities? So I think it's a really, really critical tool when we're working in this sphere, is to really remember that it does have a hugely bespoke set of privileges that come with it. And therefore, it's got a really bespoke set of barriers that also, come with that. So moving on. Thanks, Nat. It feels very COVID sort of. Next slide, please, at the moment. That is probably one for UK residents to probably understand that. So apologies to anyone overseas. So again, alongside with the work we've done with surface and sewage, looking at the importance of joining together sports and ocean conservation, as we've done with Wave Wahinis and putting together research that combines the two, it was something that I was lucky enough to work on with Dr. Rebecca Olive, to actually do this on a much, much wider scale, on a more global context, but also bringing it back to that UK lens. So we had looked at exactly who was participating in these two particular fields. So who is participating in ocean sports and who is participating in ocean activism? And can we then marry the two up and go, are they actually leading to one another? And what this evidence did find was actually there's a real lack of sort of interconnecting research. These two completely separate bodies of research, but in my mind, they're very much interlinked. And I'm sure probably quite a few of you, because that's why we're all on this call. There was very little research that drew the two together, which was like completely, unexpected for us. We really thought we'd find quite a lot that had gone to kind of like surfing has led us to XYZ, but that wasn't the case. They were very much existing in their own separate silos. So I think to pull them together, this research was a really critical and sort of groundbreaking part for us, but also highlights how siloed we are in how we work as communities. And as I'm not an academic, so for me it was really interesting to kind of view that from an external perspective and go, gosh, this is stuff that I come across every day in sort of my surf club or in my working life, but I am not in academia at all. I'm lucky enough to obviously know people like Kizzy and people like Nat who are able to support me in these endeavors. But it's really critical that academia is speaking to those people who are running surf clubs and sort of things like that, because we're the ones who actually potentially are guiding young people or who are giving young people opportunities who might just go, oh, actually, how can I get into this? And you're giving them water testing kits to go and do something. And suddenly their next step is they want to go into marine biology, and you're sort of introducing them in a really completely fun way to something that could then lead into them being, you know, that PhD sort of researcher. So I do think drawing these two subjects together is hugely like critical going forwards. But if we come back to some of the key takeaways of this research, so if you can hop on for me, why the big question is obviously why surfing does matter. You know, why is it important to conservation particularly? And I think we've all kind of experienced it independently, but having sort of research and having discussion points that put it down there are sort of what often funders, but also other people want to see. So bringing that through into the connection, it gives people awareness of what's around them, awareness of their oceans, awareness of their waterways, and how it all intertwines, regardless of where you're based geographically. You know, you can be at the top of a high rise in the middle of a capital city somewhere, and know that the water out of your tap is going all the way along to the banks of Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, for example. You know, I think we really are teaching water in those ways of global movement. So people are aware of that, and they have that element of advocacy over what they do within their own personal life has a really critical impact on somebody else's life, somewhere else. And I think that's been a really key finding for myself as someone of mixed heritage, and when I've been speaking to other people from mixed heritage backgrounds or non-European backgrounds, there's been a lot of discussion around actually my behavioral ways within the UK and things that I choose to do, live, buy, all of my habits have a direct impact on my family in Mauritius and in Bangladesh, and I can have an actual influence on them despite the fact that I'm, you know, thousands of miles away. And I think that's been a really common thread when I've spoken to my peers and my friends and family who are from sort of mixed race backgrounds. And I think that is one that actually isn't discussed a lot and isn't taken into these rooms. So it has been really good to kind of, that inclusion is really important. And again, it just highlights, you know, how we then move into stewardship. But I think sort of the big findings are how we move on, particularly with, like, from my perspective, with that UK lens. And so the culmination of all of this research across, you know, 10 years of just surf club running and watching it happen, and then, you know, coordinated surveys with, you know, with our Wave Wahinis, and then obviously going on the global Churchill Fellowship learning has sort of, you know, brought me to a very, hopefully quite succinct bit of guidance for coming into the UK setting. So if you want to pop onto the almost penultimate slide, here we go. So again, these are all coming out from the new research, which I still haven't fully published and finalized. So this is more looking at how we can change the systems that we're in. And that is definitely things like investment. And I think funding has come up quite a lot and always will. But it is funding inclusive ocean access programs. It has to happen. You have to have sometimes those bespoke programs that communities that haven't seen themselves historically represented within these spaces have that safe access point, and are in an area that understands and that has that cultural awareness of what they may or may not have experienced within water and within surfing settings. So I think that is a really key area. But one of the key things was that all of the community-led actions were the ones that were being really successful, but they needed that supporting governance to have success. So it wasn't just okay, if we get it right at grassroots, we're going to be fine, because the grassroots needed to sit within a structure that was supportive, that was safe, and that actually enabled a pathway to proceed and progress. And that is what we found, that it was a real combination of bottom up versus top down. So it's ensuring that all the systems that sports and that these organizations work within are working within a system that actually does enable this, and that currently isn't happening within the UK systems. So I think that's kind of the next step of how we do that. And it's everybody speaking to each other, ensuring that we are talking to, we are talking to academia, we are talking to charitable sectors, we are talking to coastal communities, all of those things, because it is about collaboration. And that's a word that we hear a lot, but actually is very rarely genuinely acted upon. I think it has become more of a turn of phrase rather than actually a lived collaborative experience. And actually seeing the value of sport. It's huge. Sport is huge for change. Ocean sports are huge for change, but ocean sports in particular are an extremely exclusive area of sport. So I think we need to really look at how we can take the barriers away from those particular sports or slowly remove them. And then we're going to get more people involved in ocean advocacy, but through the medium of fun, which is generally why people stay in things, is because they enjoy doing it. So yeah, you can move on to the penultimate slide. So just want to leave you with a little bit of joy and fun, and just some really key points of, when people do connect with the ocean, they protect it. And you have to have, I can't stress it enough, you have to have access before you can have any advocacy. That has to happen. And these are just some of our wonderful highlights of our club and what community it brings together for women, and the fact that it does encourage our children, and that is my youngest child, to become activists and to be aware of what is going on in their surroundings and to want to stand up and protect it. And I think that's huge. So I think that is where I'm going to leave you, and you can go on to the last slide. So there was a slide that said thank you, and if you want to get in touch, then please feel free to. But I'm sure Nat will send the slides around to everybody afterwards.
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, thank you so much, Yvette. Yeah, again, loads of questions. If you've got questions for Yvette, pop them in the box. We do have time to go over, so we obviously won't be finishing it. We're going to go straight to Kaylee. So Kaylee, I mean, it's so great to have you on this call. Thank you so much. Yvette's just been to Hawaii. I guess you didn't meet, but now you are. So Kaylee is a scientist, diver, and lifelong enthusiast from Kanoahe, Oahu. I'm not sure if I said that right. She's currently pursuing a PhD in environmental life sciences at Arizona State University, whilst based in Hilo, Hawaii. She's a NOAA Nancy Foster Scholar and an ambassador for NOAA Sanctuaries. And as a native Hawaiian scientist, she is able to seamlessly stitch together her specializations of coral reef ecology, 3D photogrammetry, and scientific diving with a perspective that creates space for Indigenous science in a heavily Western science-driven world. So I think this is the perfect lead-in from Yvette's talk. So over to you, Kaylee.
Thank you. Hopefully you can see my slide. So let's get into it. We're going to talk about how you guys can get involved on our new project, Map to Adapt.
Your slide is quite small. I don't know if you can make it bigger.
Is it showing?
We see the next one. We see two slides. We see the next one as well.
Can you see it now?
No.
Oof.
But it's okay.
No, I don't want to show the presenter screen. Hopefully this works. Does this look better?
Yes, perfect.
Is it still good?
Yes, great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll get into it. I'm going to introduce the lab. The Mega Lab is a group of scientists. We're based out of University of Hawaii at Hilo, Manoa, and Arizona State University. We are surfers, we are divers, artists, skaters, and we really wanted to bring these different perspectives into our lab so that we could look at our science from different views. Most importantly, as a scientist, is to communicate our work, and we want to be relatable to our community. So we focus a lot on scientific storytelling so that, you feel like you can connect to us on a personal level. But the mission of the lab is to develop technologies for the communities who need it the most. And maybe that's a physical technology or Indigenous knowledge perspective, data analysis, but we want to inform climate action, preserve marine ecosystems, and promote human environmental interactions. As we know, our oceans are seeing more frequent and severe impacts, both natural and anthropogenic. This is a coral reef that I have been studying for the last 10 years. In 2018, it saw a massive hurricane that went way too high in latitude, which resulted in a reef at 90 feet being completely destroyed. So in the lab, this makes us super passionate because, we are surfers, we're ocean people. We don't want to see this happen more and more. But we still know so little about our coral reefs and ocean ecosystems. We have mapped more of Mars in high resolution than we have our own coral reefs here on Earth. And so this is what drives us to study the coral reefs. We use a technique called photogrammetry, which takes overlapping images of a reef underwater or coastlines. We do a lot of coastline work. It's similar to a panorama on your phone. So it stitches images into a 3D model, which kind of looks like this. We're able to create high resolution 3D maps of the bottom of the reef, which can give us a lot of information. It gives us information on the coral species that can be found there, other types of organisms such as seaweed. We can do individual kind of like doctor analysis on each coral. We can see if they're healthy, if they're ill, what type of sickness they have, how big they are, how they might be shrinking over time. And it allows us to gain a lot of information just on the species alone. And we can start to make connections because this is a 3D model. So now we're gaining 3D data from the corals, and we can connect the 3D data such as slope or complexity to the corals, which then we can connect to the fish because we know we need rugose reefs in order to have healthy ecosystems. But as we've been doing this work for the last 10 years or so, we realize it's really not that hard. And we wanted to share and make sure we could empower our communities outside of science and academia to build their own 3D models. So I'm going to skip forward here. So we created a new project called Map to Adapt. This is Cliff Capono in the photo here. He is a surfer scientist, a chemist, and this is really his baby of a project. But we want to try and map 1 million reefs by 2030 and train about 10,000 citizen scientists. This is the mega lab, so we go pretty mega and big. We know we may not be able to meet that expectation of 1 million reefs, but if we can connect 10,000 or more scientists to their ocean space that is special, that would be good enough for us. And the data that comes along with that, it would be awesome. So this project can't be possible without citizen scientists. This is a group out of Teahupo'o. They are surfers and ocean people. Their ancestors are the corals. And they were able to use these methods that I'm about to go over in order to save their reef from dredging during the Olympics, which is super empowering to them. They were very worried. And so we go around and we teach different groups from elementary to adults, and we train them on how they can use their iPhones, their GoPros, or just maybe they're kind of nerdy with it, real photographers, to get into the water and collect images to contribute to this project. We built a website, and there's a QR code link here, but it's an interactive map. It allows you to submit your images or your 3D models that you will learn to build into this interactive map, and you can zoom in to certain sites and check out what's there. So here's an example of Big Island here in Hawaii, down on South Point, and this was a 3D model created by somebody looking at this special coral here, nice little healthy coral. So if we can get more of this data contributed into this website, not only is that great for science, but for us, we really just want people to connect with their special spaces on the coastlines or oceans, contribute to something that may be really powerful at the end. And of course, we care about your data, and we want you to be respected in the most authority. We want you to be able to say what you want to share, Maybe you don't want to share location. And so it's really up to you as the person who submits an image or a 3D model on how this data is used. So this is kind of very simplistic kind of protocol on how you would collect images. At the very least, one image looking down at the reef is awesome. We can get a lot of information from that. And if you're wanting to get really, really, really nerdy with it, I would encourage you to use a waterproof housing on your phone or a GoPro or a camera. And you're just going to pick an area that is special to you. Maybe it's your surf break or a coral reef or a tide pool. And you would go down, target your area, and you're going to face that camera down to that targeted object. And you're going to start recording a video. You're going to swim around it in a circle, swim past it from above, and you're going to start recording. And that can be the length of the video is up to you. Typically, users do anywhere from 20 seconds to a minute. And you can take that video, and there's this awesome, awesome app that's free. It's called Luma 3D app. You can access it through a phone or the web, and you can upload your video onto that app, and it will build a 3D model with your video that you just recorded in the ocean. You do need Wi-Fi, and it will take only a few minutes for it to build your 3D model. And then at the end, you have this physical digital preservation of your special site, which you could decide to either share with us, keep for yourself. But if you would love to share it with us, right now we're still working on the automated part of the website, but you can email it to us at map2adapt@gmail.com. And one of the students here at UH Hilo will start uploading it onto the map. Yeah, we have been over the last couple years training people on how to map reefs with this method, but only recently in the last 6 months started with the website. So I hope you guys are kind of stoked on this little project. I hope you get involved, get connected to your ocean. And here is a QR code for a detailed map.
Kaylee, does it have to be warm water corals, or it's really any kind of underwater
Anywhere.
Okay, great.
We're excited about anything. Yeah, I mean, even if you want to get real crazy and do it on land, that's fine too. We'll get stoked on that. Yeah, so this is the detailed tutorial. I'll put it in the chat later. And I'll just close out by thanking everybody. Thank you for this webinar. It was so amazing. If you need to contact us, that is our website and that is my email. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Amazing. Great. Thank you so much to all the speakers. We have to wrap up soon. If I see there's been some really great kind of networking in the chat, people sharing their LinkedIn accounts. What I'll do is I'll send out notes to everyone that has signed up to the webinar. And also, if the speakers are happy to share their presentations, I can send those out as well as the recording. If anyone has any, we can maybe take one question. If there's anyone that has a burning question, pop it in the Q&A. I think most of the questions got answered by everyone. So thank you to the guests. And maybe we can just have one little wrap-up question for everyone. In terms of the UN Ocean Decade, we're really in the middle of this 10-year span. So what do you see in your area of surfing protection or surfing, your specific surfing niche? What do you see? What do you hope? What are you working on to make sure that it happens before 2030? And so we can really have some change happening in surfing. Do you want to start, Kaylee? Because you're here. I think we might know what your answer is.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's just really getting people involved, caring for the ocean. And we know surfers are a great community for that because they're such great stewards. We're also like trying to kind of change perspectives using social media and making events for students or the community and trying to make science look fun and seem quite hopeful, because I feel like often we kind of look negative with science and coral reefs. And so we're just trying to make it fun, tap into the surfing community, and get people excited about maybe putting on their curiosity hat and science stuff before 2030. But yeah, really.
Is your project part of the UN Ocean Decade?
No, I don't think so. Nat Geo is funding some of it, and Reef Footwear.
Great.
So we have another project called Mapping Reef, and that's where we go to the most popular surf breaks of the world, and we start mapping the surf breaks, and we create films that go along with that. So it's like a surf film, but it's science, and then we actually take the data and publish it for academia reasons. And that's all to kind of digitally preserve the reef and then show the importance of climate change, how we can connect them to the surfers and the reef. So a lot of it is using like surf watches and connecting different parts of the reef to different parts of the wave that you're surfing, the length of the wave, that type of thing. But yeah, we're trying to just go simple with this citizen science project.
Yeah, good plan. That's great. Make it fun.
Yeah.
Who's up next? Matheus, you're next on my screen. What's next on the agenda for the Big Wave Tracker? Or what do you hope to see before 2030?
All right. I mean, I think it's, it's a kind of emerging technology, it's something really new. So I think it can help surfers in general, but we can also have, feedback from the surfers. We nowadays have really small sensors that surfers can bring to the water, and, we can compare results, validate new technologies. And of course, I think these social aspects, environmental aspects related to surfing community, and the growing of the sport to have more and more people in the water, I think it's just a huge benefit for the society in general. Yeah, and I think Big Wave Tracker can bring, more stoke to the public, bringing an interesting kind of data. And yeah, I think something like that.
Great, thank you. Yvette, you're next on my screen. What about for you?
I think for me, it's my most immediate action is actually to finish and complete the fellowship learning and research and put all that together and put that in front of these surfing governance bodies and the governance bodies within ocean conservation in the UK, and see whether they're willing to listen and make the necessary changes to make those pathways and areas more inclusive and accessible.
Great. Yes. Anna, what about you?
I think for me, it's really about making more and more like people aware, also people that are offering surfing as a sport, and also very connected to what you were sharing, Yvette, like more and more people from different backgrounds come into this amazing way to really experience the ocean and experience that our health, our well-being is not to disconnect from the ocean health and the ocean well-being. And for that to experience, as many people as possible.
Great. Kizzy, what about you?
Thanks. I think for me, so we've got so many amazing people doing all this amazing research and all these amazing citizen science-led projects and community groups doing such amazing stuff from the bottom up. But it's about bringing along our government with that and the governments around the world with that, because we need to meet in the middle. And so we can't do all the hard work and then it not change further up. So it's about translating all the work we're doing into that policy and governance space. So sharing all the work we're doing, making it not only accessible for making it accessible for everyone, and within that, it's making it accessible to people within government and policy decisions. So they want to listen to our research, they want to listen to the work we're doing so that we can have an impact through those levers as well, because there's only so much we can do, and our governments and policy drives most of what we do, unfortunately. And so it needs to change from there too. So it's not being quiet, being loud, joining our voices together as well, and not working in silos. So having webinars like this, connecting, creating spaces where we can make our voices louder together.
Amazing. Thank you. And Jess, what about you?
Yeah, I don't know if I have that much else to add. I'm just happy to be here. But yeah, I think, it's
Could you add some mapping into your citizen science?
maybe, yeah, the wheels
Yeah.
are turning. Yeah, I think just kind of demonstrating that I'm just here as a citizen scientist. This isn't part of any form of work at this stage. It's just out of my own personal passion and interest. And so, yeah, just leading by example to create possibly a pathway for more people to get involved. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you to our guest speakers. Thank you so much. You're all doing amazing work. I'm super inspired and stoked that you could be here and share with everyone. I'm so glad that everyone could join us in the audience as well. I did have a few resources that I wanted to share, and if yeah, they're just here. So actually this year I was helping one of the Ocean Decade coordinating offices with a citizen science data sharing guidelines document. So that is good if you're looking at doing your own citizen science data collection initiative. The Ocean Literacy Portal is an amazing resource, and obviously a lot of this is linked to ocean literacy, and there's a lot of ocean literacy work going on within the UN Ocean Decade. If you go to the UN Ocean Decade website, there's another little button there that is called Gen Ocean. So this is about connecting with citizen science projects and youth projects as well. So this is a really great initiative. My day job, I'm working for Rise Up for the Ocean. So this is really about empowering community voices in global ocean governance. So you can join the Navigator, which is our newsletter, and you can stay informed on issues such as deep sea mining, ocean and climate action, sustainable small-scale fisheries. And we have also got a little survey that I'm going to share with you now in the chat, if that works. I'm going to put all of those links in the chat. The first one is going to be the survey. And if you have 5 minutes and you'd like to take part in the survey, it will be really helpful. We love to get feedback and know what's going on with our survey. It's the Earth survey, I should say survey. And I think I need to just put in the Rise Up website as well. So if you're looking at more ocean issues and solutions in general, then head over to Rise Up. So with that, I'm going to say thank you so much again, and wishing you all lots of good waves, whatever kind of size wave you like, whatever temperature wave you like, and wishing you a great week, and hope to hear from you. And I hope that we will do another one of these webinars soon as well. So thank you ever so much, everyone. Take care. Bye bye.